Welcome to the Evolving Perspective, where ancient wisdom meets modern success. Here, we dive deep into stoicism, mindset, and motivation, bringing you actionable insights to fuel personal growth, resilience, and inner peace. Your mind is a battlefield. Every single day, there's a war being waged between the part of you that wants to grow, to rise, to achieve something meaningful, and the part of you that wants to stay comfortable, stay small, stay exactly where you are. And do you know the weapon that determines which side wins? It's the words you speak to yourself. Most people don't even realize they're engaged in a constant dialogue with themselves. It's happening every moment. When you wake up and think about whether you'll push through the day or hit snooze again. When you face a challenge and decide whether you'll rise to meet it or shrink back in fear. When you make a mistake and either choose to learn from it or let it define you. The way you talk to yourself in these moments is shaping your entire life, whether you're aware of it or not. If you're constantly telling yourself that you're not good enough, that you're not capable, that you'll never be able to change, then you've already lost before you've even begun. You set the ceiling of your own potential, and worse, you've made yourself believe that the ceiling is real, but it's not real. It's a construct of your own thinking. And that means you have the power to tear it down. Now, let's be clear. Changing the way you talk to yourself isn't about mindless positivity or pretending everything is fine when it isn't. That's delusion, and delusion won't help you. What will help you is an inner dialogue that's honest but disciplined. You have to be able to look at yourself and say, yes, this is where I am, but it is not where I have to stay. Yes, I have weaknesses, but I refuse to let them define me. Yes, this road is hard, but I am stronger than my struggles. And here's the crucial part. You have to say these things with authority. You have to speak to yourself as if your words have weight, because they do. Every time you tell yourself, I can't do this, you're reinforcing a neural pathway in your brain that makes it harder to take action. Every time you tell yourself, I am weak, you're training yourself to act in accordance with that belief. But when you flip the script, when you say, I can do this, even if you don't fully believe it yet, something shifts. You begin to build a new foundation, a new structure in your mind that supports the person you are becoming rather than the person you've been. And the key is repetition. You cannot say it once and expect your life to change. You have to say it again and again and again until the words sink so deeply into your subconscious that they become your default setting. That's how you rewrite the script. But let's be honest, most people don't want to do this work. They'd rather keep repeating the same limiting beliefs because in some twisted way it's easier. It gives them an excuse to stay the same, because if you keep telling yourself you're not capable, then you never have to risk failing. If you keep saying I just wasn't meant for more, then you never have to put in the effort to change. But that's the mindset of someone who is surrendered. And I refuse to believe that's you. You wouldn't be here listening to this if there wasn't a part of you that knows you are meant for more, a part of you that is tired of the same cycle, the same excuses, the same limitations, a part of you that is ready to break free. And if that part of you is still alive, even if it's just a flicker, then you owe it to yourself to feed it. You owe it to yourself to start speaking the words that will build you up instead of break you down. Because let me tell you something. No one else is going to do this for you. No one is going to walk into your life and hand you the belief in yourself that you've been missing. You have to create it. You have to build it from the inside out. You have to be the one who speaks the words of power, of resilience, of determination. Because if you don't, the world will do it for you, and the world does not care about making you strong. So from this moment forward, pay attention to the way you talk to yourself. Catch the moments where you default to weakness and interrupt them. Speak to yourself like someone who refuses to be defeated, because the voice you choose to listen to will determine the course of your life. And you, my friend, have a choice to make. There's something people don't seem to understand about the way they speak to themselves. They think they can get away with being passive, with letting their thoughts run wild, with speaking to themselves in weak, hesitant terms, as if it doesn't matter. But it does. It matters more than you can possibly imagine. Because every time you allow weakness into your language, you're allowing weakness into your mind and the way you think, the way you talk to yourself. That determines everything. Most people talk to themselves like they're fragile, like they need to be coddled. They hesitate, they negotiate with their own excuses. They allow themselves to shrink under pressure. And what happens when you do that? You reinforce the belief that you are incapable, that you are at the mercy of your feelings, that you are not in control of your own life, but you are in control. You have more power over yourself than you've ever realized. And it starts with the way you speak. Think about it. If a soldier went into battle speaking to himself the way most people do on a daily basis, what would happen? Oh, I don't know if I can do this. Maybe I'm not ready. Maybe I'll try again tomorrow. That's the language of failure. That's the language of surrender. That's the language of someone who has already lost before they've even begun. But the people who rise in this world, the people who overcome, who achieve, who push past the limits, they don't speak to themselves that way. They speak with authority. They speak with discipline. There are moments in life where you will feel weak. You will feel tired. You will feel like quitting. And it is in those moments that your words matter the most. Because if you allow weakness into your self-talk, it will consume you. But if you speak with authority, if you command yourself to stand up, to move forward, to do what needs to be done, then you take control. You override the doubt, the fear, the hesitation, and you replace it with action. And let's be honest, it's not easy, it's not comfortable. It takes effort to speak to yourself like you mean it. Because discipline isn't just about what you do, it's about how you think, how you speak, how you approach every single moment of your life. You have to train your mind the same way you would train your body. You have to force it to obey you, to respond to your command instead of letting it control you. So stop speaking to yourself in weak, uncertain terms. Stop saying maybe, I hope, I'll try. Those words give you an escape route. They give you permission to fail before you've even attempted to succeed. Instead, say, I will. Say, I must. Say, there is no other option. Because when you do that, you eliminate the possibility of failure. You leave yourself no choice but to rise. And that's what this is about. It's about training yourself to rise no matter what. Because there will be days when you don't feel like it. There will be days when everything in you wants to give up, to take the easy road, to sink back into comfort. And in those moments, you need a voice inside your head that doesn't waver. A voice that says, I don't care how I feel. I don't care if it's hard. I don't care if I'm tired. I will do it anyway. But here's the thing. No one else is going to build that voice for you. You have to do it yourself. You have to be the one who demands more, who refuses to tolerate weakness, who speaks with the authority of someone who has already decided to win. Because the alternative is to let life push you around, to let your emotions dictate your actions, to let your own doubts keep you in a cycle of mediocrity. And you know that's not what you were meant for. You know there's something in you that's bigger than that, something stronger, something capable of rising above all of it. But it will not rise if you continue to speak like someone who is waiting to be saved. You don't need to be saved. You need to take control. You need to step up. You need to talk to yourself like someone who refuses to break. Because at the end of the day, no one else's words matter as much as your own. You can have all the motivation in the world, all the encouragement, all the advice, but if your own voice is weak, none of it will stick. It starts with you. It starts with the way you speak. And when you finally understand that, when you finally start speaking to yourself with the authority and discipline you've been lacking, watch how everything changes. Your mind is a machine, and like any machine, it runs on the programming it has received. Every thought, every belief, every word you've absorbed over the years has shaped the way you see yourself and the world around you. And here's the problem. Most of that programming wasn't put there by you. It came from your environment, from your upbringing, from the people around you who projected their own fears, their own limitations, their own failures onto you. And whether you realized it or not, you accepted it. Think about that for a second. How many of the beliefs you carry about yourself are actually yours? How many of the things you tell yourself, the doubts, the insecurities, the fears, how many of those were given to you by someone else? Maybe a teacher who told you weren't smart enough, maybe a parent who told you to be realistic, maybe a friend who laughed at your ambition, who made you feel foolish for even daring to think you could be more. And instead of rejecting those words, instead of standing up and saying, no, that's not who I am, you let them in. And once they were inside, They started to shape the way you think, the way you speak to yourself, the way you act in the world. That's how it happens. Little by little, the world programs you to stay small. It tells you what you can't do. It convinces you that you're not enough. And once that belief is in place, you start to reinforce it yourself. You tell yourself, I'm not strong enough, I'm not smart enough, I'll never be successful, this is just who I am. And the moment you say those words, the moment you accept them as truth, you lock yourself in a cage of your own making. But here's what you need to understand. That programming is not permanent. It can be rewritten, it must be rewritten. If you want to change your life, if you want to break out of the cycle you're in, you have to start by changing the words you allow inside your mind. You have to reprogram yourself with truth and with strength. And that's not just about thinking positively. It's not about looking in the mirror and saying, I'm great, when you don't believe it. That's not strength. That's self-deception. What you need is real truth, the kind of truth that doesn't let you off the hook, the kind of truth that challenges you to rise. You need to tell yourself, yes, I have weaknesses, but they do not define me. Yes, I have failed, but I am not a failure. Yes, I am not where I want to be, but I have the power to change that, because that is the truth, that is reality, and if you repeat it enough, if you own it, if you internalize it, something shifts inside you. You start to see the excuses for what they are, lies you've been telling yourself to stay comfortable. You start to recognize the limitations in your mind as nothing more than illusions. You start to take control. But understand this, it won't happen overnight. You've spent years, maybe even decades, reinforcing the wrong beliefs, the wrong words, the wrong patterns. You don't undo that in a day. You have to fight for it. You have to be relentless, because every time you replace weakness with strength in your self-talk, every time you correct a lie with truth, every time you refuse to let negative thoughts take root, you are rewiring your mind. And over time, that new programming becomes your reality. And then something incredible happens. You start to feel different. You start to act different. You carry yourself differently. People around you notice it. You become someone who moves with purpose, with confidence, with a sense of certainty, not because you're pretending, not because you're forcing yourself to, but because that's who you've become. That is the power of reprogramming your mind. That is the power of speaking truth to yourself until it becomes the foundation of your identity. And once you've built that foundation, once your mind is programmed for strength instead of weakness, nothing can stop you. The world will still try to feed you lies. It will still try to convince you that you can't, that you shouldn't, that you're not enough. But when your mind is solid, when your self-talk is unshakable, those lies will bounce right off of you. They won't touch you, because you will know deep in your core exactly who you are, and no one, not the world, not your past, not even your own fears, will be able to take that from you. Words shape reality. They define the way you think, the way you act, and ultimately the way you live. And yet most people speak in a way that weakens them. They don't even realize it. But every time they say maybe, every time they say I'll try, every time they say I can't, they are reinforcing a version of themselves that is passive, uncertain, and incapable. And once you accept that language into your mind, it infects everything. It dictates the way you approach challenges. It gives you an excuse to hesitate, to procrastinate, to avoid stepping fully into your own strength. Think about it. When you say, I'll try, what does that actually mean? It means you're giving yourself an escape route. You're leaving the door open to failure. You're telling yourself, I'll make an attempt, but I won't fully commit. And what happens when you go into something with that kind of mindset? You don't give it everything, you hesitate, and when the first difficulty arises, you crumble, because deep down, you never actually decided to succeed, you only decided to try. That's what weak language does. It builds hesitation into your thinking. It gives you an out before you've even begun. And the more you allow those words into your self-talk, the more they shape the way you operate. You begin to say things like, I'm just not the kind of person who can do that, or, that's not possible for me. And once those words are spoken, once they are, accepted, they become real. They create the boundaries of your life. They define what you believe you are capable of. And most people never challenge those boundaries. They live their entire lives inside a prison that was built by nothing more than the words they use. But here's the truth. You don't have to accept that prison. You don't have to speak weakness into your life. You don't have to give yourself an excuse to fail. You can change the way you talk to yourself, and when you do, you will change everything. It starts by eliminating the words that undermine your own strength. Stop saying I can't. Stop saying I'll try. Stop saying maybe. Those words do not belong in the vocabulary of someone who is serious about rising, about growing, about overcoming. Replace them with language that leaves no room for weakness. Instead of saying I'll try, say I will. Instead of saying I can't, say I must. Instead of saying maybe, say there is no other option. And then act in accordance with those words, because it's not enough to just speak differently. You have to live differently. You have to prove to yourself that your words are not empty. And that means doing the things you said you would do, even when it's hard, even when you don't feel like it, even when every part of you wants to quit. Because the moment you follow through on the words you speak, you create momentum. You begin to see yourself as someone who does what they say, who follows through, who doesn't allow weakness into their thinking. And that is how you begin to rebuild your identity. But here's the challenge. Most people are addicted to weak language. They've used it for so long that it feels natural, it feels safe. Because if you say I'll try instead of I will, you give yourself an excuse. If you say I can't instead of I must, you relieve yourself of responsibility. If you say maybe instead of I am doing this, you don't have to face the discomfort of real commitment. And that's exactly why you have to break the habit. You have to catch yourself every time you use weak language and replace it immediately. You have to train your mind to reject hesitation, to reject doubt, to reject anything that gives you an excuse to stay the same. Because once you change your words, you change your thoughts. Once you change your thoughts, you change your actions. And once you change your actions, your entire life transforms. But no one is going to do this for you. No one is going to follow you around and correct your words. You have to take control of it yourself. You have to decide right now that weak language has no place in your life anymore. And once you make that decision, once you commit to speaking and thinking in a way that builds strength instead of weakness, you will never go back. Because you will have seen firsthand what happens when you command yourself with power. You will see that every time you say I will instead of I'll try, you move forward. Every time you say I must instead of I can't, you find a way. Every time you eliminate weak language from your mind, you remove another obstacle standing between you and the person you were meant to become. And that is the moment everything changes. The way you speak is more powerful than you realize. Every word you say, every sentence you form is either reinforcing who you currently are or shaping who you will become. And most people, without even realizing it, speak in a way that keeps them trapped in the very identity they're trying to escape. They say, I'm not confident, I'm not disciplined, I'm not the kind of person who can do that. And they wonder why nothing changes. But how could it? How could you ever become more than what you are if the very language you use reinforces your limitations? You have to understand that the way you speak does not just reflect your reality, it creates it. And that means if you want to change, if you want to become someone stronger, more disciplined, more capable, you cannot afford to keep speaking as if you are still weak. You have to start speaking as if you are already the person you want to become. Not as if it's a possibility, not as if it's something far off in the future, as if it is already true. Because the moment you begin to speak that way, the moment you align your words with the identity you are trying to build, you give yourself permission to step into it. And this is not about lying to yourself. This is not about delusion. It's about directing your mind toward the truth of what is possible. Because the only difference between the person you are now and the person you want to become is the actions you take. And those actions are directly influenced by the way you speak. If you tell yourself, I am disciplined, you will act accordingly. If you tell yourself, I follow through on my commitments, you will make it a priority to do so. If you tell yourself, I do what is necessary, no matter how I feel, you will begin to embody that strength. But most people do the opposite. They reinforce their bad habits with their words. They say things like, I'm just lazy. I've never been good at that. I always mess up. And they don't realize that every time they say it, they are reinforcing that identity. They are making it harder and harder to change because they are programming their mind to believe that their weaknesses are permanent. But they are not permanent. They are habits. and habits can be broken. The first step is to stop speaking as if your current state is final. You are not lazy. You are someone who has developed lazy habits, and you are in the process of changing them. You are not undisciplined. You are someone who is learning to build discipline. Do you see the difference? One locks you into the past, the other moves you toward the future. And the words you use will determine which direction you go. It's not about waiting until you feel like the person you want to be. It's about speaking as if you already are that person and then letting your actions follow, because feelings are unreliable. Feelings fluctuate. But words are deliberate. Words can be chosen. And if you deliberately choose words that reflect strength, that reflect growth, that reflect discipline, you will begin to act in accordance with them. And this isn't easy. It's uncomfortable. It feels unnatural at first because you are overriding years of programming that has told you to speak as if you are small. But that programming has to be broken. And every time you replace weak language with strong language, every time you catch yourself speaking in a way that limits you and you correct it, you are reconditioning your mind. You are reinforcing a new identity, one that is built on power instead of hesitation. And once you do this enough, something remarkable happens. You start to believe it. Not because you forced yourself to, not because you tricked yourself, but because you proved it through action. You spoke as if you were disciplined, so you acted with discipline. You spoke as if you were strong, so you pushed through resistance. You spoke as if you followed through, so you did. And over time, that becomes who you are. Not because you wished for it, not because you hoped for it, because you chose it. Because you spoke it into existence and then lived it out. And that is the real power here. You are never trapped by who you used to be. You are only trapped by the way you continue to speak about yourself. But the moment you shift your language, the moment you stop speaking as a version of yourself that you are trying to leave behind and start speaking as the person you are becoming, everything begins to change. Because words are not just words. They are commands. They are the instructions you give to your mind. And when you begin to speak as if you are already the person you want to be, you leave yourself no choice but to step into that reality. Every word you speak carries weight. It isn't just noise. It's a declaration of what you believe about yourself, about the world, about what is possible. And whether you realize it or not, those declarations shape your future. If you constantly speak in a way that reinforces weakness, failure, and limitation, then that is the path your life will follow. If you speak with clarity, strength, and conviction, you set yourself on a course towards something greater. Most people don't think about this. They speak carelessly. They fill their days with complaints, excuses, and self-deprecating remarks, never stopping to consider that each time they do, they are reinforcing the very patterns they claim to want to escape. They say, "I'll never be successful. Things never work out for me. I always mess things up." And then they wonder why their lives don't change. But how could they? If you speak as if you are destined to fail, if you reinforce that belief with your own words, you will act accordingly. You will hesitate. You will avoid risk. You will hold yourself back in ways you don't even realize, all because you have conditioned your mind to expect failure. But it works the other way too. The moment you take control of your words, the moment you refuse to speak weakness into your life, you begin to shift your entire trajectory. You start speaking about yourself as someone who is capable, who is disciplined, who is relentless in the pursuit of what matters. And when you do that, when you align your words with the future you want instead of the limitations of your past, you begin to act in accordance with those words. You start making decisions from a place of strength rather than fear. You start carrying yourself with a different kind of energy. You start moving forward instead of staying trapped in the same cycle. And that is how your words shape your destiny. Because the words you choose today will determine the actions you take tomorrow, and the actions you take tomorrow will define the life you build. So choose them wisely. Speak only what strengthens you, and let every word you say be a step toward the person you were meant to become. Everything begins with the way you speak to yourself. The words you choose are not just descriptions of your reality. They are instructions to your mind, commands that shape your actions, and ultimately the foundation upon which your future is built. If you fill your thoughts with weakness, hesitation, and self-doubt, then your life will reflect that. But if you choose strength, if you speak with authority and discipline, if you align your words with the person you are becoming rather than the person you've been, everything will begin to change. This is not about blind positivity or empty affirmations. This is about taking responsibility for the language you allow into your mind. It is about speaking as if you are already the person you want to be, eliminating the words that hold you back and replacing them with those that push you forward. It is about choosing to reprogram your mind with truth and strength rather than excuses and limitations. Because the words you repeat become the reality you live. The way you speak shapes the way you think shapes the way you act, and the way you act determines the life you build. So do not take this lightly. Do not let careless, weak language keep you trapped in a version of yourself that you are meant to outgrow. Speak with conviction, speak with purpose. Speak as if your words are carving the path ahead, because they are. And when you master this, when you take full control of the dialogue in your mind, you will realize that you were never truly held back by your circumstances. You were only ever held back by the words you used to describe them. Change those words, and you change everything. Make sure to subscribe for more motivational content, and like the video for more stoic-minded content like this. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.